Hello everybody. Today we will see the paranasal air sinuses. So you should know the location and functional anatomy as well as the applied anatomy of the paranasal air sinuses. So what are these paranasal air sinuses? They are air containing bony spaces around the nasal cavity. They are lined by mucous membrane and arranged in 4 pairs on each side. So in the diagram, the blue ones are the frontal sinuses, the green ones are the ethmoid sinuses, the yellow is the maxillary sinus, and in the posterior plane, the purple one is the sphenoid air sinus. Clinically, they are divided into anterior and posterior groups. Anterior include maxillary, frontal and anterior ethmoidal, and the posterior group includes the posterior ethmoidal and sphenoidal air sinuses. These sinuses are rudimentary or absent at birth. They enlarge with 2 spurts, one at 7 to 8 years of age and second one is in the post-pubertal age. They develop as outpouchings or diverticula which invade the neighboring bones. So these neighboring bones are pneumatic bones. They contain these air-filled spaces and these spaces are created at the expense of the diploe. What is the function of paranasal air sinuses? They make the skull lighter. They act as air conditioning chamber. Now what do you mean by this? Whatever the air is inhaled, it traverses through these air sinuses and the temperature of this air is maintained. Some moisture is added, so maintains the humidity of the air, and it also filters this air of any dust or foreign particles. So that is called air conditioning chamber. Then they act as resonating chambers. So these sinuses give a specific tone to the voice or resonance to the voice. That is why when a person has sinusitis, the voice changes. These sinuses secrete mucus and this secretion is drained into the nose. The sinuses are lined by ciliated epithelium which helps in the drainage of this secretion. In this figure, you can see that the sinuses are present at the expense of the diploe. In the pink ones are the frontal sinus. You can see the outer table and inner table, and in between the two, these are the sinuses. The lower one is the lateral radiograph of the skull showing F is for frontal sinus, E is ethmoidal. Remember, ethmoid air sinuses are arranged in groups and they are many. They are anterior, middle and posterior ethmoidal sinuses. The yellow one is the sphenoid and the lower one, purple, is the maxillary sinus. Coming to the details of each sinus, the frontal sinuses are 2 in number. They are present between inner and outer tables of frontal bone, above and deep to the medial end of the superciliary arch. The extent is they extend backwards into the roof of the orbit. They are asymmetric in shape and measure about 3 by 2.5 by 1.8 centimeters. These frontal sinuses are divided by a thin septum of bone between the two. The relations anteriorly related to the skin over the forehead, posteriorly because it is just behind the frontal bone, there is the anterior cranial fossa which lodges the frontal lobe of the brain with its meninges. Inferiorly, it is related to the roof of the orbit and the contents of the orbit. The frontal sinus opens into the middle meatus through the ethmoidal infundibulum and into the hiatus semilunaris. It may open directly or through a frontonasal duct. The blood supply is through supraorbital artery. Veins drain into supraorbital and ultimately to the superior ophthalmic veins, and the nerve is also the supraorbital nerve. Lymphatics drain into the submandibular nodes. Now in the similar way, each sinus we can describe in the same fashion, that is the position of the sinus, the size, shape, the extent, the relations, where it opens, and the blood supply, nerve supply and lymphatic drainage. Next sinus is the ethmoidal sinus. These are numerous. The position is between the medial wall of orbit and lateral wall of the nose. They lie within the labyrinth of ethmoid bone. Relations are above it extends into the orbital plate of the frontal bone. Behind it is related to the sphenoid sinus and orbital process of palatine bone, and anteriorly it is related to the lacrimal bone. They are divided into three groups: anterior, middle and posterior. The anterior one is a group of 1 to 11, different books mention different numbers, open into the middle meatus in the anterior part of the hiatus semilunaris. The middle are 1 to 7, they form an elevation in the middle meatus of nose that is called as bulla ethmoidalis and open into the middle meatus on or above the bulla. The posterior are 1 to 7 and these open into the superior meatus of the nose. So anterior and middle open in the middle meatus of nose while posterior open in the superior meatus. The blood supply and nerve supply, anterior and middle ethmoidal sinuses are supplied by anterior ethmoidal nerves and vessels. Posterior ethmoidal sinus supplied by posterior ethmoidal nerves and vessels. Additional branches, that is orbital branches, come from the pterygopalatine ganglion. The lymphatics anterior and middle drain into submandibular, whereas posterior drain into the retropharyngeal group of lymph nodes. Coming to the maxillary sinus, these are the largest a pair and they are the first to develop. They lie in the body of maxilla, measure around 3.5 by 2.5 by 3.25 centimeters. In the figure you can see this is the maxillary sinus which is shown within the maxillary bone and it is roughly pyramidal in shape. The boundaries are apex of the pyramid is directed laterally towards the zygomatic process of maxilla. The base is directed medially towards the lateral wall of nose. This base shows the opening of the maxillary sinus which is called the antrum of Highmore. The maxillary sinus opens in the middle meatus in the floor of hiatus semilunaris. The peculiarity of maxillary sinus is that its opening lies at a higher level from the floor. So the arrows indicate the drainage of the maxillary sinus. So it is clear that if there is some secretion which is accumulated within the sinus, natural drainage is not possible unless the sinus is totally filled because its opening is at a higher level than its floor. So this is the maxillary sinus and its opening. Now the opening of the sinus, if you see in isolated maxilla bone, it is larger in size, but in life it is reduced by overlapping of certain structures or bones coming from above or below. So coming from above is the uncinate process of ethmoid and lacrimal bone. From below is the inferior nasal concha, and from behind is the perpendicular plate of palatine. Also, because of the mucosa, the antrum becomes very small in size, about 3 to 4 millimeters in diameter. The roof is formed by the floor of the orbit, the orbital surface of the maxilla. This is the roof, and here you can see the infraorbital nerves and vessels which are passing through the infraorbital canal. The floor is formed by the alveolar processes of the maxilla with the roots of the upper premolars and molars. So we have seen the apex, the base, the roof, the floor, the maxillary. Anterior wall of maxillary sinus is formed by facial surface of the maxilla, that is on the soft tissue of the cheek, along with plexus of infraorbital nerves and vessels and the anterior superior alveolar nerve. The posterior wall, this posterior wall of the maxilla, which is seen over here, is related to the infratemporal fossa. Hence, this posterior wall of maxillary sinus forms the anterior boundary of infratemporal and pterygopalatine fossae and is pierced by posterior superior alveolar nerves and vessels. The blood supply of maxillary sinus comes from anterior, middle and posterior superior alveolar vessels. These are the vessels supplying the upper jaw, and they also supply this maxillary sinus. Veins drain into facial vein and pterygoid venous plexus. The nerves are infraorbital and anterior, middle and posterior superior alveolar nerves. These are branches of maxillary nerve. The lymphatics drain into the submandibular group of lymph nodes. Sphenoid sinuses are also paired, lie within the body of the sphenoid and separated from each other by a thin septum. They are asymmetric, measure 2 by 1.5 by 2 centimeters. The extent is anteriorly up to the roof of the orbit, posteriorly up to the foramen magnum and laterally up to the pterygoid canal. So here this is the sphenoid air sinus within the sphenoid bone. Sphenoid sinuses open into the supreme meatus through the sphenoethmoidal recess. So here this is the sphenoid sinus on X-ray. Relations: superiorly, the sinus is related to the optic chiasma and hypophysis cerebri. On each side, it is related to the cavernous sinus and internal carotid artery. Below is the roof of the, so this is the lower aspect. Below is the roof of the nasopharynx. In front is the sphenoethmoidal recess, and behind there is pons, medulla and the, so this is the pons, medulla and basilar plexus of veins. Blood supply is through the posterior ethmoidal vessels. Veins drain into pterygoid venous plexus and cavernous sinus. Nerves supplied by posterior ethmoidal nerve and branches of pterygopalatine ganglion. Lymphatics drain into retropharyngeal group of nodes. Coming to applied anatomy of the paranasal air sinuses, acute sinusitis is the inflammation of the mucosa of the sinuses. It is common and it is recurrent in smokers because the cilia are destroyed due to smoking and drainage of the secretion is hampered. Most commonly affected is the maxillary sinus, and pain from these infected sinuses is often referred to the forehead because there is same innervation, like the frontal sinus is supplied by supraorbital, so it is referred to the forehead. The sinusitis can be open type when the drainage is into the nasal cavity, or if closed type if the opening of the sinus is blocked. Diagnosis is done by transillumination and radiograph. Now on transillumination, if the sinus is filled with secretion or pus, it will be opaque. So this is showing the transillumination test. The causes of sinusitis may be infections or local obstruction to the ventilation or drainage, stasis of secretions in the nasal cavity, or environmental pollution or poor general health of the patient due to some systemic disorder. Now to see clearly all the sinuses, a special view is taken in which the patient is asked to extend his head so that the chin touches the X-ray plate, and this is called as Waters view. Here all the sinuses are clearly seen, and if there is some secretion, the diagnosis is easier. Maxillary sinusitis is most common because, as we have already seen, the opening is at a higher level which prevents natural drainage. Referred pain of maxillary sinusitis is often referred to the tooth causing toothache or over the infraorbital skin. Now the patient is asked to sleep on the sound side to promote this drainage, but if this is not effective, then in severe cases surgery may be needed. Antral puncture is done by two approaches. One, we can go through the inferior nasal concha so that a hole can be created near the floor of the maxillary sinus, or still lower down through the mouth, that is in the gingivo-labial fold. This is called as Caldwell-Luck operation. Chronic sinusitis can also occur if the infection lasts for more than months. There may be complications like mucocele or cysts or osteomyelitis. Important complication is frontal sinusitis may lead to spread to the orbit, leading to edema or abscess or cellulitis. Intracranial spread may lead to meningitis or even cavernous sinus thrombosis. Carcinoma of the paranasal sinuses. Benign tumors like osteomas and ameloblastomas can occur. Malignant tumors are common in the maxillary sinus, and they are usually squamous cell type or adenocarcinomas. Now the invasion to the surrounding structures. So if we know the anatomy, we can understand the invasion of the maxillary carcinoma. Medially, it will protrude into the nasal cavity causing nasal obstruction, epistaxis or blockage of nasolacrimal duct leading to epiphora, that is excessive tears, dribbling of tears over the cheek. Superiorly, it may go to the orbit leading to proptosis and diplopia. Inferiorly, bulge into the oral cavity. Laterally, it may cause a swelling on the face, and posteriorly it will involve the palatine nerves and severe pain in the upper teeth. Now the sphenoidal sinus can be used as an approach to the pituitary gland. So it is called as transsphenoidal approach because we can go through a scope from the nose through the sphenoidal air sinus and reach the pituitary gland for any surgery on the pituitary. So this is the transsphenoidal approach.